the ultimatum of Donald Trump, which the deadline did, the it's going to be 8 p.m. today Eastern time. And he said what he posted is a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. And Larry, here is what the latest call that Fox News had with Donald Trump. They talked with Donald Trump moments ago. Here is what they reported.
Got off the phone with the president, and he called, and I said, listen, if you were to put odds on it, what were the odds that this is going to end up being a negotiated deal? He said he wasn't going to put odds on it, but he said 8 p.m. is happening. That's what he said. He said, it is, if we get to that point, there is going to be an attack like they have not seen. Now, he's sticking to that at this point. Now, he said if negotiations move forward today and there is something concrete, that could change. But at this hour, he didn't want to put odds on it, but he said it is moving forward with the plans that we have. That's a huge deal. And obviously, we all think that it's a thing that he's putting out there to say, don't do this. He says he doesn't want to do it, but he is, at this hour, sticking to it and saying it might be likely if they don't come to the table.
Brett, how?
Yeah. You know what's so strange, Larry, about this whole negotiation that they're talking about, that there is no negotiations on the part of Iranians. There is no talk.
Bingo. You're listening to a man who is growing, and not just Donald Trump, that Fox newscaster too, is growing increasingly frustrated, increasingly exasperated that everything hasn't gone swimmingly in the way he thought it would go. And I suspect the way Hegseth told him it would go. Maybe not General Kane, but Hegseth probably was as sycophantic about telling him everything would be copacetic, everything would be terrific, it'd be over quickly, as anybody else in the administration, and even Trump himself, because they're cut from the same cloth, Petey and Donald. What you're looking at is a president who doesn't know how to get out of this. He has no idea how to get out of it. He's just been handed a colossal tactical defeat in the desert. I think Larry Johnson and others have parsed it quite well. I've heard some of the same things, but I think we lost quite a few aircraft, and I think we lost some troops. And he's not being honest about that. He's not telling the American people. He's not telling the Congress that this has happened. He took a defeat. He took a in-your-face defeat. It was all designed to do a special mission with regard to the nuclear reactor. And Archie just, in his remarks in Istanbul, and boy, did he look tired. I don't think I've ever seen him look so tired. And I've been following him pretty closely here for the last 6 months or so. He just looked tired, and he was not stumbling over his words, but he was slurring them just a little bit and searching for the right English word. I've never seen him do that, but he's usually very, very polished. He's obviously tired, incredibly tired. I don't blame him. But he was saying they didn't attack a nuclear reactor. They attacked the United Nations. They attacked the International Atomic Energy Agency. They attacked the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They attacked international law. They attacked a country abiding by all of its commitments in terms of nuclear power. That's what they attacked. You people need to understand this is a rogue nation. It is tearing up everything that we have created in the world that we call international law before your face. And now, he didn't say this, he probably would later. He was taking questions. And now we're getting ready to, after having announced it, according to Donald Trump anyway, perpetrate another genocide. And note that I say another genocide, because without the United States of America, the genocide in Gaza could not have been carried out. Not the way it was. So we're getting ready to perpetrate a second genocide on a second president's watch. And this one has just announced it to all and sundry from one end of the world to the other. This is something I never thought I would see in my life. This is Hitler come back as an American.
Larry, you mentioned the operation. Donald Trump yesterday tried to, to make his case about how successful was this operation. But you mentioned you believe that was some sort of raid in Iran.
It was, and it featured multiple C-130 aircraft, both refuelers and transports. It featured Black Hawks. It featured, as we saw, overhead air cover, F-15 in this case. It featured little birds, probably OH-6, like I flew in Vietnam, for example, much modernized and really high tech now. But it featured everything that you might expect Delta or SEAL Team 6 or those two together to use. And it failed. It didn't work. All I could think about, I was listening to Larry talk about it, but I'd heard it from another gentleman. And all I could think about was the desert. Remember the desert under Jimmy Carter when we had the big helicopter?
The Bass.
Yeah, it was called Eagle Claw, I think, Operation Eagle Claw. Yeah. And it was a disaster, but we admitted it. We had a president in the White House who wasn't going to lie about it. We admitted it, and we canceled the operation. We didn't go ahead with it. Major Meadows got stuck in Iran. I knew Major Meadows. He had to E&E his way out of Iran because he was the one that was going to be meeting them at the place where they were keeping the bulk of the hostages and introduce them to the location and guide them in and everything. This is a disaster that they're hiding. They're hiding it. I haven't heard any real debrief or testimony or whatever as to what really happened. I suspect a few people died too.
We had, I don't know if you saw, we had a lady, the documents of a lady in that, that scene. They have just, they were just opening up the documents. Let me bring the video here because it shows the documents they were. Yeah. Here is the moment they find the document, and you see the lady, Amanda M. Ryder, and nobody's talking about her anymore, and even nobody mentioned her name in the United States.
Yeah,
and these are.
I can't imagine that they would bring someone like that. Looked like a civilian to me. Didn't look like a military person. So unless she's a nuclear expert or something like that, they felt her expertise was necessary.
She was on B2, visa of Israel. And, the visa for tourists and, the people to go and visit Israel. And she was part of this operation.
Yeah, anytime you see anything happening in Iran, on the ground in particular, but a lot of the times in the air too, count on Israel being there. Count on Israel being an integral part of the operation in one way or another, either along for intelligence provision or along to actually help with kinetic action. They're going to be there. And by the way, I'm sure you're going to ask me about this, but it's looking worse than 2006 right now in Lebanon for the IDF. They are getting their butts handed to them. So you got Iran. Ooh, Trump better live up to his promise. Israel being pounded ceaselessly with missiles from Iran. Tel Aviv was described to me today by a longtime citizen of that city as burning. And you got Lebanon. And you got Gaza unfinished. Israel is not looking too good.
Larry, when you look at the situation right now, Donald Trump talking about putting an end, a whole civilization will die tonight. What comes to your mind? Is he talking about nuclear weapons? Because we had the same sort of rhetoric with J.D. Vance. He's in Hungary. He said he was there. I don't know if he's going to help Orban in Hungary, because right now nobody likes Donald Trump, and
nobody likes Vance either.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually,
and how is that going to be helpful for Orban? But putting that aside, when it comes to he said we have the tools that haven't been used so far. I think the only tool that he's talking about is going to be something big as a nuclear bomb. What is your understanding of that?
Well, I listened to John this morning, John Mearsheimer. I think he was on the Judge's show, and I think John pretty well. He originally used the image of the escalation ladder some weeks ago, no, probably months now. And he talked about us being on the bottom rung or the next rung or whatever. And at that particular time, John was not willing to go the full route, if you will, to use of nuclear weapons. He was a little more cagey this time, but he was also, like me, really worried, I think. And when it came to describing what Trump was doing, I don't think I've ever heard such forceful language from Professor Mearsheimer about what Trump had done in his announcement. He announced that he was going to commit a genocide. It's that clear. It's that plain. He says he's going to eradicate a people. Well, it's not too far from that statement if you think he's serious to use of nuclear weapons, because he isn't going to eradicate them with conventional means. There's just no way. He could stay at it for 10 years and he wouldn't eradicate them. He might bring them to their knees and get them finally to say, I quit. I don't even think he's going to do that, even if he stays at it forever, and he's going to run out of a lot of what he needs to do it with. But with nuclear weapons, it would be an entirely new dimension, and it brings Russia and China and several other powers, Pakistan comes to mind immediately, into the fight and into the fray. I listened to Sergei Lavrov talking. They asked him a question. He's in Istanbul, I believe. Istanbul was up on the board behind him. But they asked him a question from the audience about, did he believe the Bahrain proposal for control of the Strait of Hormuz was a good proposal? He didn't even bat an eye. No, it's not. So that tells me that they know exactly what Iran is thinking, and Iran knows exactly what they're thinking. So we're looking at the potential. Were Trump to use nuclear weapons in a massive way against Iran, I do not think the rest of the world would take it lying down. I think we'd probably be off to the races with competitors, principally Russia and China, going to their arsenals and checking things out and getting ready, because this is simply a step too far. It's not something anyone should be talking about, even in threats like Donald Trump is. But that's what people are now talking about. Serious people are talking about what he might have meant by that comment. That's not good. That's not good at all. And I think we've seen that what we have for our president right now borders on maniacal, borders on megalomania. We know about the narcissism. We know about all the things that psychiatrists and psychologists have said about the case of Donald Trump. But I think what we're seeing now is true megalomania. I think he's lost his rocker, as we used to say. He's off his rocker, as we used to say. And there's no one around him to rein him in. J.D. Vance isn't going to do it. J.D. Vance doesn't have the courage to do it. No one else is going to do it. Thune's not going to do it. Johnson's not going to do it. Johnson's too busy wishing for the Armageddon to come about. You can't make this stuff up. These people are serious about Jesus and this war being for Jesus. People like Johnson, people like Ted Cruz. And Trump doesn't give a hang about Jesus. I doubt he could spell his name, but he uses it, and he has got it now to the point where he's got all these different allies behind him that are crude, indifferent, stupid, crass, cretins, religious zealots. And plus he's latched by an umbilical cord to the next person in the world most like him, Bibi Netanyahu. Not in terms of dumbness, because Bibi's pretty smart, but in terms of just being a cretin and bordering on megalomania, and getting more and more like that because he's so desperate about his own personal situation. And he's desperate now because Israel is being destroyed. It is being destroyed on several fronts. That's got to be plaguing Trump somewhat too, because I imagine some of those big billionaire Jewish Americans and others who are ultra-Zionists are plaguing him in terms of what he should do and what he should continue to do to Iran. They're behind him, pushing him hard, because this is what Netanyahu wants. He wants Iran in absolute chaos, disorganized in chaos. All of its ballistic missiles searched out and destroyed. All of its uranium searched out and destroyed. That's what Israel wants. At the same time, it wants Lebanon. It wants Gaza. It wants the West Bank. It wants all Jerusalem. This is quite a combination of thieves and murderers.
I think the language that Donald Trump is using is similar to what Benjamin Netanyahu was using before Donald Trump. But
it's like they echo one another. It's like an echo chamber.
Yeah, exactly. But the difference is, Larry, when you represent a country like the United States, it's a huge responsibility as the president of the United States. It's not just Israel. No, Netanyahu can say whatever he wants to say, but as the president of the United States, it's important what you're using, the way that you're expressing yourself, your feelings. And that's hugely problematic because they see the United States, they don't see Donald Trump himself. Because Donald Trump right now is the face, is the United States, is the top, is the head of the United States as the president. He has the power to use nuclear bombs. That's why it's so important. No one else has this sort of power to use nuclear bombs. This is the problem that the people, this is the main concern on the part of the people who are learning, who are hearing Donald Trump talking this way.
Let me say two things. One, don't make too light of Bibi Netanyahu. He is as dangerous as Donald Trump is in his own way. He's apt to use a nuclear weapon or two also. Wouldn't that be fun? Israel tossing a few out there and the United States tossing a few more. So I don't discount Netanyahu in terms of the region or in terms of his ability that way to impact global relations and global security. When you put them together, you really have a combination that feeds off itself, back and forth, back and forth. And they feed off their desperation too. And both men are very desperate right now. And it shocks me when I think to myself, would my military allow this president to hurl nuclear weapons at another state? And my mind can't say positively no. That is a very disquieting thought. I never thought I would think that. I never thought a president would use a nuclear weapon under anything other than having been attacked first with nuclear weapons. That's the way I thought about it for the entire time of the Cold War. We will not initiate nuclear weapons use, despite what we did against Japan. We will not initiate. We will only respond. And that's our deterrence. And that's the reason we need to have a lot of weapons, because they're going to get destroyed in that initial strike. and we have to have enough to respond. That provides deterrence. Now I'm looking, as you just suggested, at not only Bibi Netanyahu, a major non-NATO ally in Southwest Asia, possibly using a nuclear weapon, but us joining him. And if my military doesn't stand up to this president and say no and walk out and refuse to execute, and I'm not confident of that anymore. I wouldn't have thought that as many have executed what we've done thus far would have done it. I wouldn't have thought that those ships would have fired those tomahawks at that school. And the excuse that they didn't know has been blown away for me, because I've seen the onboard camera video of those tomahawks approaching that school, what is clearly a school. And besides, they've attacked many other targets. They're just as big a war crime as that school. I would never have thought my military would participate in that to the degree that they have to this point. So what am I to conclude about their willingness to participate in Donald Trump's destroying another civilization?